Hey, what's up, good people? How you doing? Welcome back to Stock Up with Larry Jones. You're going to want to watch this video in its entirety. Today, I have a very special guest. Glad to have him on. But first, hit that like, subscribe, notification bell like you guys always do. Those of you that's been rolling with this family, meaning you and myself, called Stock Up, then go ahead and hit the like button. And as you guys know, today's video is brought to you by Moo. All right, get your 16 free stock and get up to 5.1 APR. Let's get right into it. I'm going to bring this gentleman on. I am very happy to have him as a guest, Mr. Zachary Bradford, the CEO of CleanSpark. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on today, Larry.
Hey, it is a pleasure to have you on. We're going to get right into it. I want to give you as much time as you need to talk about crypto, Bitcoin, and you as a crypto miner, one that have come on the radar. You guys came on with a roar, should I say, in the crypto mining space. First, I'd like to ask you rather. I always say the strength of a company is based on its CEO, right? Could you give my audience a background, a kind of a background check?
Yeah. Co-founded the company almost 10 years ago now. I think it'll be 10 years in February. And we actually got our start as an energy company. So we were in renewables. We were building microgrids for, data centers and other applications. And, I came across Bitcoin during that process. And, in addition to that, as co-founding, I was the CFO for the first 7 years. So financial background, I have a CPA, took over the CEO chair in 2019 and, really have built the company based on, a strategic approach over ideology. Both energy and Bitcoin can be heavily ideological approaches, and really taking, the background and everything I've learned in energy and finance and applying it to what got us here today. And it's been a journey, but it's been one where, we've gone all in on Bitcoin and, grown the company where we mined our first Bitcoin in December of 2020 to where right now by hash rate, we are sitting, I believe, in the third largest spot for a public company. And we are on our way to likely take the number 2 spot come early next quarter.
You know, it's quite funny that you said you're the third largest. Just a few days ago, I did a video, and those that's been following me already know that I had two other companies. I had a total of 5 companies. We know that there's many companies, but I took the 5 top crypto mining companies and compared them, right? And I actually had CleanSpark as number 3, but could be number 2. So it's funny you said that. And that was before we even set this video up. All right. So could you elaborate a little more on the hash rate? Well, we have a lot of newbies here. So
Mhm.
explain what it is and then elaborate a little more, please.
Yeah. So the way to think about hash rate is, what we do as Bitcoin miners is we run servers, and that servers, they process data. It keeps the network secure and allows, Bitcoin to be transacted without a third party like a bank that really goes through, right? So we're all independent, but how we get rewarded is the algorithm gives us Bitcoin in the form of newly created Bitcoin and a little bit in transaction fees for all that processing power. So the best way to measure a miner's revenue, so the top line, is by the amount of hash rate they have. So we have 10 exahash, which represents the number of transactions. Just think of a massive number. We won't get into all the decimals that is. And for every processing power we have, we just get a little bit of Bitcoin. So 10 exahash of processing power translates to right now, between 22 and 25 Bitcoin every day is what we get. And so
Wow.
you think that if somebody has 1 exahash, they're, 1/10 of that. And that's the way when you're comparing miners, you can get the top line. And that's ultimately what it means. So that's how we've grown. We're on our way to 16 exahash actually. We're going to do a really big jump, but because we've been really busy over the last several months building a new facility that is set up to go live early 2024.
Oh, wow. So when you say early, you mean Q1?
Q1, yeah. So we're going to be done with our piece of the construction actually in December, and we're just
Okay.
going to be waiting for the city to finish the very last piece of their infrastructure project, which relates to the power lines that ultimately connect to the substation that powers our facility.
Right.
And then we're going to start flipping brand new servers on. So we've been busy at work. About 45,000 new servers will come online as soon as we can.
45,000. Now, I have to ask you one hard question. Do you think that's going to happen before the halving?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Ah,
absolutely. We're really confident it's going to happen before the halving. With a little bit of luck, it'll happen in January.
that will be awesome. Okay, okay, CleanSpark. All right. I had you at 3. Now you starting to come up to number 2 right now. I like that.
Working hard
Let,
at it.
so as it pertains to your hash rate, in your balance sheet in your company, would that be under operating expense? Just a question.
Yeah, no, really all of that goes into capital. So you'd see our balance sheet and you'd see it as, really our fixed asset number, all those servers coming online. That's what you're going to see. So right now for 10 exahash, we have about 80, almost 89,000 servers running. Adding 45,000 on top of it is the next step to make that leap. And then we actually bought even more that'll come online that should get us, we have some optionality, but we bought enough servers to get us into 20 exahash inside of 2024.
So when do you think you'll be number 2 instead of number 3 with the a new equipment?
It's going to depend on how long it takes some of our peers to get some of their stuff online. So,
Gotcha.
you're familiar with the other companies as your audience may be, but it's going to be us and Riot, battling back and forth for the number 2 spot is what it looks
Yes.
like
Yeah.
inside of the first quarter.
And everybody knows it's Mara Riot, CleanSpark. You guys are taking you're minting your position. How do you think you compare to the big boys, Mara and Riot, which you are now one of the big boys, as opposed to the rest? Should I say the
Yeah.
hives and the rest?
I believe we are the most efficient, and what that means is that we measure in a couple ways. Efficiency in the machines. Are the amount of power that we use to produce Bitcoin, we can
Yes.
actually use less power than most of our peers. But also, then it comes down to capital efficiency. If you look at how we pick the timing of how we grew,
Hmm.
we paid less for our servers than any of our peers. And so we grew kind of in the opposite sense. A lot of people, we had a big bull market, right? Bitcoin's, roaring. All of us were growing, but we actually were a little bit cautious in the growth because,
Hmm.
frankly, people were behaving irrationally. They were paying too much for their machines, and we
Yeah.
actually took a small hiatus in the growth. And our prediction was, we said it in November. I guess that would have been 21.
Yes.
We said, people are behaving irrationally. We
Hmm.
sold, our Bitcoin, and we sold it starting at the peak. And we said that there seems to be some troubled waters, and we waited to go all in on our growth. We then bought troubled assets. We bought mining sites that didn't manage their capital well to really spur our growth on. And then when we bought machines, we paid up to 80% less than some of
Wow.
our peers, including, as you pointed out, the so-called big boys, right?
Yeah.
We chose to grow in a bear market because it was much more capital efficient.
Right.
And, we wanted to be positioned at halving as a top tier miner, because I think that matters, because capital, where does all the capital go? And I think that, post halving, it's going to be a flight to quality. And we
Yeah.
wanted to be the highest quality miner, behaving with the highest capital efficiency, with the most efficient miners, with really cheap power. And most importantly, We own and we operate our facilities. That's the big difference between, I'm just going to say it for the show, us and Marathon. We own our facilities 100%. It's our
Wow.
employees. You always care more about your own stuff than
Right.
somebody else's.
Hmm.
And our uptime is higher than anybody at the same scale. So
You
meaning we keep the servers online longer, more consistently than everybody else.
all of this talk about spot ETFs with Bitcoin. You have Kathy Woods talking, Michael, and all of these other people. What do you see, or what can you shine a light on what you know about the future of Bitcoin?
You know, Bitcoin is an amazing piece of technology and, has so much potential. And I think that we're even underestimating its potential. But when it comes to the ETFs, I think that there's going to be two things. You have
Hmm.
simple economics, supply and demand. You are going to have all this new capital that
Right.
actually, based on the mandates of the investment funds, has not been able to touch Bitcoin, whether they wanted to or not, right? All that new capital is going to come in. And I think it's going to lead to an increase in the Bitcoin price, if I was to make a prediction. But I think more importantly is what it means for Bitcoin as an investment grade asset. If you're a believer in Bitcoin like myself or anybody else, we already believe it to be an investment grade asset.
Right.
But what is the last step for that? And that's really this stamp of approval that a lot of fund managers are looking at as ETFs. Because once ETFs are approved, spot ETFs by the SEC, it means that a hedge fund is allowed to hold Bitcoin really on its balance sheet. When that happens, that's going to remove the doubt that if you're a corporation, you can hold Bitcoin on your balance sheet.
Yes.
It's also going to remove the fear that an investment advisor may or may not have about recommending associated stocks, whether that be MicroStrategy or a mining company. So I think the ripple effect of the ETF is just as important as the fact that supply and demand should lead to an increase in Bitcoin's price. But I think the ripple effect as it relates to companies like mine is the fact that I think that you're going to see a lot of new capital that stayed on the sidelines come into the space. And whether we needed the legitimacy stamp of approval or not, I think it's important to some parties.
I like the way you said whether we needed it or not, because I feel the same way. We are right here on that. I'm going to ask you a question. This will probably be the last question, but with your background, when you told me you were the CFO, I knew you had a background in finance, of course. A lot of CFOs are previous accountants and then wind up going to be the CEO. With your background in all of the companies that you could have, or all of the areas you could have went into, why Bitcoin?
I think that it is something that has a true potential to change the world. And, it was something that I really got passionate about once I understood. And something that's interesting is I was a Bitcoin skeptic, actually.
So
I
was I.
was I was a huge skeptic in 2019 and 2017 and 2018. All of us came across it at some point, right?
Yes.
And then once I got to understand what it works and or how it works and how it's built in scarcity. There's never more than 21 million. There's already 19 million Bitcoin. And that does drive the value, but so does the utility. And so you look at the price of Bitcoin as a measurement of its value, is one way to do it. But you look at the amount of people that are now using Bitcoin as a separate measurement of its value. There are more people using Bitcoin today than ever before. And that continues to grow. And so that to me, the ability to be part of that is what really got me into it from a passion point of view. And then secondly, I'm a believer that actually energy is the backbone of how Bitcoin works. I don't think that there's a better purpose to use energy than for Bitcoin right now, because I really think that it can change the world for the positive, just that much.
Wouldn't you agree that crypto and more importantly, Bitcoin is the great equalizer for the underbanked or the unbanked?
I really would. I think nobody can tell you whether you can or can't own Bitcoin. There's on ramps and off ramps to buying and selling Bitcoin, Sure. But ultimately, you can get Bitcoin and you can treat it the same as cash and put it in a cold wallet. No one can take that from you. And more importantly, our cash right now, we have, debasement of the currency through just the money printing machine that the government has turned into.
Hmm.
And so to be able to take control and to look at something and know for, the certainty of its scarcity for the next 100 years
Yes.
is something that no government currency is going to give us right now. And that's why I think that whether you live in the US or whether you live in Argentina, both companies experiencing inflation very differently, or whether you don't have access to, you know, um, a, a regular payment account and you live overseas, um, Bitcoin gives you access to all of these pieces that so many of us in the US take for granted. And that's why in the US we see it as an investment asset, but the majority of the rest of the world sees it as their day-to-day livelihood for transacting for groceries. And when you understand how versatile that makes Bitcoin, it's an incredible thing to be part of.
So I am so glad that we talked about more than the obvious with crypto, Bitcoin, should I say, the mining companies, and I was just looking at the comparisons and your growth. I'm going to go into that in a later date. You know how the miners, how they just the miners actually outperformed Bitcoin in a lot of segments in 2020 and 2021. Do you see the miners, the percentage, I call it dancing or multiplying as much as they did last cycle or a little less?
Um, so I'm going to add to make sure I answer it right. I'm going to answer it in two
Right.
ways. I think that miners will continue to outperform Bitcoin. And the reason is because we're the only leveraged play on Bitcoin. If anybody wants to buy Bitcoin, doesn't matter whether you're a hedge fund or
Hmm.
whether you're anybody, you have to go and you have to buy it at the prevailing price. Bitcoin miners, we get Bitcoin for the cost it takes us to produce it. So we can produce Bitcoin, and if Bitcoin is 100,000 or if it is 35,000, my cost of Bitcoin is exactly the same, and that margin is the levered play on Bitcoin.
Hmm.
And the only way
Hmm.
to get exposure to it is through a miner.
Right.
Now, so that's why I think miners in general will outperform it. But I'm going to go a step further. One of the other reasons I think that that can happen is I think that there's going to be a flight to quality of capital, and the quality names will outperform the non-quality. Right now, there's, I believe, 25 miners roughly that are publicly listed, and I think that post halving, the health of the companies will be judged in a different way.
Yeah.
Like 2 years ago, it was all about growth, 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 right? It's going to be about who can actually survive and thrive. So I think there's going to be a lot few names. So the fewer names will also help the quality miners outperform Bitcoin.
I agree with you. A lot of miners will go bankrupt. A lot of the small miners that are struggling that didn't control their costs, they kind of had the FTX frame of mind. Let's just spend as much money as we can. Those are
Mhm.
not going to survive. But companies that did their due diligence and controlled costs will be one of the few that does. Hey, I don't want to take any more of your time. This has been great. I would like to have you on later on, whether it be post halving or just before the halving, to have this conversation again when this stock is dancing and multiplying, which I hope it does because I am personally invested in your company.
Well, I hope it
Anything
does too, and I would love to be on the show again. It'd be great.
great? Anything you'd like to say in part in that you want people to know?
The big thing is I think spend the time to do the research. I think people will come to their own conclusions about the quality of CleanSpark. You can also find me. I'm not active on social media with the exception of Twitter, but feel free to reach out, ping me there. I always try and share the latest company updates on Twitter there. But otherwise, go to the website, learn about the company. Research and education is the only way to make good decisions, and I encourage everybody to do it because we feel we can stand up to that investigation.
I and one other thing I would add to that is for those, so my dad, he's old enough to be my dad. He didn't understand crypto, right? He didn't understand Bitcoin. But what I shared with him is I manage his portfolio. So I says, well, I'm going to buy some. He says, well, I don't have a crypto account. I says, with the crypto mining companies, you don't need a crypto account. It's traded like the stock market. And another thing I like about over crypto, what I like about the crypto mining companies is you can put a trailing stop loss on it. That's what I like, right? And so we did. For those of you that don't know, it wasn't CleanSpark, but it was another Bitcoin mining company. I got it. My average was $2.50, and I sold it at $48 a share. All right. So, hey, thank you, Zachary Bradford, for being a guest on this show. And we're looking forward to talking to you later. All right.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Hey. All right. Thank you, sir. Good people, please leave a comment. If you enjoyed this interview, you'd like to see more like this, leave me a comment. As always, in closing, live, love, laugh, and learn. Make sure you check out the links below. Make sure you get Moo Moo. This is a limited time offer. We'll see you later.